Happy New Year, everyone. Appreciate everybody coming today for the monthly ISA meeting, and those that joined via the web as well. So I'm Dean Bickerton, president of the section, and today we don't have a technical topic today. What we wanted to use the meeting for today was just to kind of recap a little bit of what we did last year. Many of you noticed we're kind of trying to retool the ISA New Orleans section here, and trying to come up with new ways to deliver content and provide value to our membership. So the purpose of this meeting is to kind of talk a little bit about what we did last year. Bill Brock was able to attend the fall leaders meeting for the ISA organization in Tampa back in October, correct? And so he's got a recap for that, so that it kind of lets you know what's going on with ISA, the larger organization. And then at the end, we kind of want to hear your feedback as well. We'd like to know what topics you're looking for. We have a lot of sponsors here that are helping us out, and all of our sponsors kind of get first dibs at delivering topics. So all we ask is that the sponsor cover the lunch and then provide the technical topic, and at the speaker, obviously, and then we'll record the session. We'll post the PowerPoint materials, any other materials in our archive, and this has been pretty useful for a lot of people. I want to say thanks to our webmaster, Wayne Welk. Wayne does a really good job keeping this website updated, and I encourage everybody to check it out and look for things that you can use. And I'll do just a real quick tour through it on a few things. First off, if you go to the events section at the top and you look at meeting archives, you can see the last 3 meetings that we had. So our September meeting that was on the ISA 101 standard for HMI lifecycle design, that entire session is recorded and available for you to watch there. You can also just download the PowerPoint. So if you just want to look at the PowerPoint presentation, get a feel for it, and if you're more interested and want to go watch the whole presentation, you can do that. So we always try to load the PowerPoint presentation up there and then a link to the video itself. Then in October, we had a presentation on safety transmitters, so a hybrid safety and logic solver transmitter, and that presentation is up there. And then in November, we did a wireless heart gas detection session. So that's kind of our theme here, is to use the website as an archive to store this information. I had a few people contact me at the end of last year saying, hey, we'd like to watch some of these presentations and get our PDH credits for watching the presentations, and we allowed that. So we let them watch presentations. They send us an email. Bill generates a PDH certificate for them. So if you can't make the meeting live, you can't make it web stream, the content's there, and you feel free to pull the content down, use it, and if you need PDHs, we're trying to provide value to our membership. So we're looking for ways that we can do that. And the technical topics has always been kind of the cornerstone of what ISA is. So feel free to use this information, and we have a calendar posted of all the next meetings throughout the year. We're running the meetings. It's typically the first Tuesday of the month. This is kind of our default location, but we're open to other venues. If you're a sponsor and you want to host at another venue, that's fine. We're using the web to try to drive people, give people information, and drive them to different locations if they need to, or different times or dates. So really, our website is definitely where you need to go to get all the information about what we're doing with ISA. All right, so with that, I'm going to turn it over to Bill Brock for him to give us an update of the fall leaders meeting and kind of the direction of ISA and what's going on with the larger organization.
Good. Okay, good. So thanks for coming again. So the fall leaders meeting was held in Tampa Bay, and again, the logo. Keep in mind setting the standard for automation. So that's kind of where ISA is centralized around that. So we're going to kind of centralize our theme around that. But there was a lot of information, good information that was able to get from this. One of the things is, why do people join ISA? Why is it of value to different people? It's really interesting because people do it for different reasons. We kind of think, oh, okay, ISA means setting the standards, so it's all about standards. So that's why everybody's here, is to learn about standards. No, it's not. If you ask everybody, there's going to be an individual different response. One guy who was a professor, he was at this meeting. He said that he actually knew about ISA for 30 years, but he didn't actually get involved in ISA till the last 10 years. Reason being is he thought it was an entity or a part of the U.S. government. He didn't realize it was a non-for-profit individual organization. So why do we? Well, I'll tell you, I actually joined because my boss, who happens to be the president, or he was the president until January, Steve Flantz, he kind of influenced me, right? So this was back when I was living up in St. Louis. He influenced me to actually join ISA, and I thought, well, it was good for my career. Did I really know what ISA was about? Well, I knew it was good for something. So now, the more and more and more that I see, the more interesting it gets, and the more I want to learn and to do more. So going back historically, this is interesting because I don't want to go all the way back on a lot of the history, but just one of these particular facts of history. The first declaration policy about ISA was that it was supposed to advance the arts and sciences related to the design, manufacturing, use of instruments and controls. So that's where ISA started off with, right? Instrument Society of America. We know now it's the International Society of Automation. So what was it to do? To encourage research, to foster education, to advance the standards. And keep in mind, this was written back a long time ago, to promote intercourse among its members. Well, some terminology is different. So we see a lot of the things that are still trying to progress, but some things you got to keep in mind for what it was back then when it was established. So at the core, some of the competencies there's five different things that make up ISA, really. One is, of course, the standards. I didn't realize there was 40,000 plus standards. They're all a result of voluntary efforts. 4,000 plus individuals involved, 140 committees, subcommittees, task groups that are put together. And these are to help advance the standards that a lot of these people are using or affiliated with or have something to do with. And some of these standards, like for instance, this hazardous location standards, that's a standard, I think it was ISA 88. It's a standard that was actually developed, and basically it's finished and it's turned over to like the UL. So UL uses it. There's other standards that we'll get to that are continuing to develop. So it's also to help for best practice guidelines. So these are the standards that we've kind of come to know. But what's interesting, if you look at this particular standard, is it's not just, we think of ISA, okay, ISA, we compartmentalize it and it's just ISA. But like, for instance, this one, Application of Safety Instrumented Systems, it's also ANSI. So keep that in mind too, that it's a good brand as far as standards, but it also encompasses and works with other organizations to develop these standards. So the second core competency of ISA is certifications. These certifications, for instance, the CAP, the CCST, so that's on a technician level, the CAP is on a professional level, and CSE is on the engineering license level, because a lot of times in in the education world, there's not really a control systems engineering program, right? So that's where ISA can fill that role. On a technician level, it fills that role, but it's not just now with instruments, it's more, and not just with controls. If you notice, there's some other certification programs, for instance, the ISA, again, IEC 62443, which is a cyber security certification. So ISA is leading as far as cybersecurity. These programs, I was talking with Steve Huff, who is actually another ISA president of the whole organization back some years ago. I knew him personally because he was up in St. Louis too. But these programs, like for instance the CAP and the CCST, is kind of familiar or similar to project management. So you know that PM, that's put together to fill an industry need. So this is kind of taken off, but it hasn't taken off as much as because it's looking for the industry to actually accept it. Some places it does, but it's very valuable. So if an individual really wants to progress, those are very valuable initials on the end of the name. So this education and training is actually, as far as income for ISA, that is the more than 50% of the income that comes in. So most people who take this training are not ISA members. So ISA members ISA is not all about just members. There's a lot of value that provides for the industry. These ones that are identified in this light blue, instructor-led, innovative boot camp courses, hands-on portable labs. These are ones that we, as far as this particular section in New Orleans, we're looking at putting on. So this is one of the areas too that we could use some feedback from you all. But this is what we're looking at as far as putting on, because it helps not only the industry, it helps the section, and it also helps ISA as an organization to know what really we can provide for the industry. So the training by topic, control systems, cybersecurity, plant maintenance, safety, those are some of the topics we're looking at doing. But these are really, the offer is that it's non-biased, vendor neutral training. So it's something that you won't find from other companies. Publications. Now I thought publications would be, you know, the moneymaker, right, for ISA, but it's not. But publications, ISA has gotten into now a lot of ebooks. So, and I just noticed, I think it was this week, they just came out with the 4th edition of the Condensed Handbook of Measurement and Control, which is kind of one of the basic parts of the ISA publications. But InTech, that's a free magazine that comes with the being a member of ISA. But there's some other ones, you know, like for instance, this biomedical science instrumentation. So that's something that's been out, but that's a technical paper. But it is something that ISA is looking at, and I'll get into that in a little bit. So this is the 5th one, the conferences and the exhibits. Basically, ISA does this particular conference, or at this conference, there was the gala. This is kind of a pictures of the gala, in which they recognize a lot of the industry leaders. For instance, over on the top right here is Nick Sands. A lot of y'all may know Nicholas Sands. He's leading in some of the different ISA standards in the development of it. So they recognize them. There's a lot of people who are in the industry. For instance, this woman right here is the CEO of Siemens. But there's a lot of doctors and so forth who are developing standards and leading in the ISA. And then this one, our section activities. If you notice over here in the black, these are the ones that we as ISA the section really promote. So monthly meetings, networking, PDHs, for instance, like Dean mentioned about the PDHs, we had some individuals who weren't able to attend in person. So they requested, hey, I needed to get my PDHs in for the year. Can you help me out? So we were able to help them out with the technology that we use here. There's two areas that we're looking at, Diane Iverson scholarships and the training courses. So those are things that you can look for in the upcoming year as far as what the section activities are going to advance on. And then really what the presentation was about, especially within the leaders part of it, the fall leaders meeting, was how it could be member centric. So some of the things that it was kind of interesting that they were promoting or sharing with us, we as the section, especially within the past year, have really been working on. So they were actually looking to us and getting information from us on how we're using it. For instance, the social media, what locations and times we've changed to be able to adapt to what the ISA members need, recorded sessions, and then some of the analytics that we receive back from when we send out notices and so forth. That helps us, and the analytics we get back from surveys. So take the surveys if you can. That helps. And then trying to address the what a lot of people have thought of as far as ISA is the generations that attend the meetings. So is that what ISA represents? Traditionalists, baby boomers, that's kind of what ISA has been known for. But what I found interesting, that I was actually at a meeting, which I'm going to go over in a little bit, the detailed information, but I was actually sitting down and a young person came and sat down next to me. Of course, I must be telling my age because I looked at him and I thought, man, he's from high school, you know, but he wasn't. So he was a 23-year-old. He actually worked for Rockwell Automation, which I was like, wow, okay. So I work with Rockwell Automation. And so I asked him, I said, well, what attracted you? What did you think was of interest to come to this meeting and even to join ISA? And he said, well, first of all, I was in college and I was trying to do an internship, and I was told that there was 6 PLCs that needed to be programmed. And I was like, what is a PLC? So he said, he approached his professor and he said, what's a PLC? And the professor said, I don't know. What's a PLC? So I found that interesting, you know, but he's really trying to promote and learn more and grasp everything he can. And that's kind of some of the traits of the Generation Z, we call it. They really take in a lot of information. They try to absorb it. So how can ISA help them? That's one of the areas that as a organization and as a group, we're trying to do. I kind of found it interesting that, you know, this Generation Y or Generation Z, they really like text. It's interesting how each generation kind of communicates a little bit differently, but they like text. So that's kind of where we as a section, we're going to be trying to explore how we can text and get information out to this generation. So stay tuned. So now I'm going to kind of get into some of the delegates' votes. Delegates meet at this meeting also too to be able to vote on some of the pertinent issues or things that come up. So there was 2 things in particular. If you notice at the bottom, whoops, I went too fast. Okay, at the bottom there's the membership levels. Membership levels are regular, senior, and fellow members. That's kind of has to deal with how long you've been in the industry. Then there's automation affiliate member, student member, virtual student member, and then there used to be what was considered the automation community member. Well, that's not really it's not a member. There's no cost, there's nothing that they're signing up for. So one of the things that was on the table was to change that to automation community subscribers. So that got changed. And another thing was the senior member grade. used to be that you had to be 10 years in the industry. So what they added was an associate's degree, or a 2-year engineering or science, and at least 8 years of employment, with 2 of those being in charge. So basically you're responsible, or you're directing efforts. So with that, you can become a senior member, or apply to become a senior member. There's 2 of us in here that are senior members. I know Dean and myself are senior members. And I know that we have within the section, we do have some fellows. Larry Iverson, you're not a fellow? Okay. I know Ram is a fellow. Ram's been around for a long time. He has some good stories too in history. But so we do have, and we also have within the ISA section, which is kind of interesting too. If you go back to the history, New Orleans was one of the first sections that was actually put together right after the ISA organization. So it's kind of neat that we can also be on the leading edge of redeveloping and getting into the next generation within ISA. The district, on the district level, there's kind of been a reorganization. It used to be District 7 included all of Central and South America. So you can imagine there was a big communications problems when a lot of those who were in the Houston, of course, Houston ends up being a lot of the, because it's so large, it has a lot of the industry leaders there. So they put it to where it's just Louisiana and Texas in the District 7. And the Permian Basin has just been revitalized. So while I was there, this is what I kind of want to get to, is the crux of it. While I was there, I looked through the actual agenda, and I looked at the standards, the committees that were actually meeting. And the following is going to be some of those standards that they're actually working on. And I found this interesting. Standard 18, so you can kind of look by the number. That standard's been around for a long time, and yet they're still working on this standard. And the reason being is if you notice some of the definition is that it's has to do with the alarm systems, including annunciator, process automation systems, the general development, design, installation, and management of alarm systems in the process industries. So that's a continuously growing thing, right? So we're seeing as the industry is going, that these standards are progressing with it. So it's establishing terminology and practices, including definition, design, installation, operation, maintenance, and modification and work processes around the alarm systems. And in our society, in our world, there's actually an index now called Productivity Index. So what it is basically, how can you squeeze more out of a person with less in your industry, right? So as the industries automate, you're finding less and less people who have the knowledge, and who can actually implement. So on the floors, remember there was one company I worked for, was actually a totally automated floor. So it was kind of interesting to look out on this huge plant floor, and you maybe see 3 or 4 people, whereas years past it was, at least 60, 100 people that were going around. So as you squeeze more, then it means that you're going to get more information, which is going to cause more things such as alarms. Interesting on this particular standard, I put at the bottom, Nick Sands is he's a voting member chair on this particular standard. Another standard is a standard 75 that has to do with control valves. So the control valves, and this is interesting too, is it committee or subcommittee shall maintain liaison with ANSI committee B16 or B16 SCO. So, and it also serves as the United States Technical Advisor Group for the International Electrical Mechanical Commission. So this particular one kind of illustrates the fact of where there's a collaboration and it's working with other organizations on developing these standards or continuing to make the standards stronger, right? So a lot of times ISA is finding out that there's some other organizations who started working on it, or they may work on a particular piece of it, and ISA can fill the role of the controls or the automation side of it. ISA 96, that has to do with valve actuator. I kind of mentioned down here too that the DVP7 Vice President James Young, he's also a voting member. He was actually a chair on the previous standard too. Kind of very similar or similar in nature standards. This one has to do with the valve actuators. And then this ISA 99 threw that in because it has to do with what's going on now, right? So cybersecurity, if you kind of keep up with the news was just, I think, kind of related to the cybersecurity, that there's some vulnerabilities within two of the particular programs. It has to do with the way that the chips are made. So they're finding out these vulnerabilities. So cybersecurity is continuously having to jump on this stuff. ISA 100 has to do with wireless systems. This is kind of where I think that at 100 it kind of gets into, you know, after the millennial, right? So it's getting into more of what we're seeing. So wireless, the environment for wireless technology, application of wireless technology. And it's kind of interesting too, the environment. It deals with the definition of wireless radio frequencies, starting point, vibrations, temperature, humidity, EMC, interoperability. So this particular standard kind of encompasses almost everything you can think of, at least I can, of what wireless entails being implemented in industries. And then 101, that's the human machine. I think Dean mentioned it earlier that we had an actual discussion. Dean actually presented on it back in September. But this 101 standard was actually being continuously worked on. We know that some of the things that have been applied, it's like, for instance, the menu hierarchies, the screen navigation conventions, graphics and color conventions, dynamic elements, alarming conventions, security methods, electronic signature attributes. So there's a lot of things that are involved in this HMI standard. Nick Sands, again, is a voting member, managing director. So, kind of mentioned Nick Sands. He actually works for DuPont. He was actually working at Laplace for a while. So, we've actually had him here at our section meetings here. We're trying to get him to do a section meeting, probably in the late spring, early summer. But those are some of the standards that he can talk to also. So this one is interesting to me because it's the 112. So SCADA systems, that's been around for a while, right? I mean, that's been around, what, 30, 40 years at least? But you notice it's a newly formed as of August 2016 for putting together some standards. So there's obviously some holes or some standards that need to be looked at. So this one is developing standards technical reports to improve the overall reliability of SCADA systems, design, installation, integration, and operation of the infrastructure for pipelines, water, wastewater, power, oil and gas, and other industries. So that's what they're looking at within this particular standard. These, mind you, these are all the standards that were actually being looked at this actually having committee and subcommittee meetings at the fall leaders meeting back in October in the continuous development. So I went to this particular meeting, this committee meeting, and I really thought this was a cool meeting. It was in a big room, had probably about as large as this room, was just the committee on a big U-shaped tables. and it was composed of a lot of different people from all different parts of the industries. So it had like doctors on there. It had, of course, engineers, but it had a whole bunch of different people. And what they were considering is the Technology Search Committee. So what technologies, what things are out there in the world that ISA could either look at wholly or partially for helping in what may need to be looked at as far as standards. The thing is, in this developing world, a lot of this stuff is developed so quick that it's like A, it's going to be keeping up, or B, is trying to address really quick. So again, some of the industry automation, medical technology, in the automotive industry, building automation for complete systems. A lot of these things, if you think of them, they've been around, but as they implement them more and more and more, it's going to be a separate own system, right? With hardly any interference or operation with humans. So that's where it's going to be, it needs to develop. For instance, autonomous vehicles. This is one of the areas that they're looking at. I saw this picture and I was like, that's a really cool futuristic vehicle, right? That's off in the future, right? Many years. This vehicle by Mercedes-Benz is actually being tested. So that means it's already been developed. It's already working. It's being tested in San Francisco and in Austin, Texas. And there's some actual video you can see of this where they're looking at the autonomous interoperability with humans walking around in regular street, not some, closed off area where they're doing a lot of protected testing. This is with real human beings. So autonomous vehicles, we kind of, sometimes we hear, like, for instance, the Google vehicle where it had a wreck, right? So it's like, how are they really developing? How far have they gotten? So this is one of the areas they're looking at for standards. Another one is drones. Drones it's been around for several years, right? But when you actually think about the fact that, for instance, Amazon, FedEx, they're looking at actually using these for, bringing packages to people. That's going to be a whole lot of standards that are going to be needed just for that. Biomedical, that's developing now to where they actually had on the news just a couple of days ago about robotics. The robotics is no longer this hard structured piece. It's actually pieces of like Velcro, or almost kind of like Batman, with stuff that's put onto a human being that becomes part of the human's outside exoskeleton structure, using particular types of equipment to further advance robotics in a soft shell now, instead of just this hard shell that we've always known. So that's some of the different areas. Industrial cloud, that's something that is really growing, leaps and bounds, probably almost double every year. It's a lot of stuff that we're seeing. Those all need standards. So the spectrum of what they're looking at includes a lot of these particular areas. For instance, laser scanning. Laser scanning dealing with like emergency operations, like an earthquake where they're trying to recover people. Spectral imaging, 3D printing. And it's interesting that this stuff is actually stuff that, for instance, this week, there's what's called the Consumer Electronics Show that's being held in Las Vegas. And a lot of this stuff was actually being shown as far as leading edge technology. But there needs to be standards now for these things. And that's what this particular group or committee does. So they look at these areas, they see whether other, for instance, ANSI, if they started developing standards for it, and then they form subcommittees or committees if there's enough that needs to be done. For instance, laser detection with airplane safety, shooting lasers at airplanes, position control. Those are a lot of different areas. Then they put those committees together, and actually explore whether how much further that should be developed and who they're going to be working with. So I just thought I'd throw in that there's the ISA.org website where you can get a lot of the information. This website is probably going to be, it has some character flaws, let's put it that way, and it's going to be redeveloped again within the next year or two. So it should be even more advanced in really showing automation within the organization. And there's also automation.com. Automation.com is kind of an arm within ISA, and it is very good for the publications part of it. So with that, is there any questions or observations? Go ahead, Larry.
Yeah, I'm sitting here looking at all this impressive stuff. Motions going through my mind. One is that it's no secret to most of the people, if not everybody in here, that this section has been in some duress for a long time, and that you and Dean have been behind, and a few others getting it going again under some extraordinary operating principles. So one thing that occurs to me is that, was there any discussion either at the organized level during this meeting, or just at a cocktail party, or informally, I should say, about distress or duress of other sections in the district and in the organization as a whole? And the second thing that occurred to me about this is that all of these, all of the standards work and continuing development of the standards seems to me at a very high level, and it's making available these things to anybody who comes along and get it, who wants it. And if they have to pay for it, that's good. I mean, that's a good thing, good revenue source. However, what makes an organization like this really go is the people at this level here. So what are they doing to, number one, attract people at the local level to join a section and to participate in it? And is there any recognition that there are probably more than one section that's been in trouble the last few years? So what's going on in that area, if anything?
So yes, on all different levels, yes, they are. We a cocktail with the president himself I discussed, and with in the big meeting there was actually a meeting that dealt with it actually had a colonel from the Army come in, and he kind of discussed what was how they operate as an organization, because it had to deal with the special ops. So special ops has to really conform really quick to be able to get things done. So the basic meat of that was that with change, there will be a constant. There's always change, and it has to be adaptability. And that's kind of what the president, Steve Flantz, has been preaching for a while. So some of those things I mentioned there, like being member-centric. So within, we need to look at, first of all, the ISA is not just an organization just for the members. Most of the income comes from outside of members, and it's not going to be people who ever want to be a member. They appreciate what ISA presents and provides, for instance, the education part. So not just looking at what we have for many years in the way that the organization has developed, but there has been some internal changes too. For instance, the CEO was taken out. He was replaced. They're still looking for the new CEO, but part of the problem is that the CEO was looking at things from one particular centric. So the key thing that they're looking at right now is how to develop the areas that are being successful, because this is across all organizations, every organization in the industries. All industries are not seeing a lot of participation as they used to. And part of that has to do with, for instance, the ISA, when its peak was about 1996. That was the peak number of people. That was the peak for their exhibit. That was the peak for everything. And if you look at what's happened with communications, Google and those type of ways of getting information have been since that time. So it's easier for people to get information, and it's harder sometimes for especially the generations. And that's kind of what was being directed, is how can we get to like Generation X and Generation Y, because they look at it, ISA as has been around forever and is going to be running forever. They appreciate that there's some standards for it, but what do they actually be able to contribute? So that's where it comes down to the level where at the section we can start attracting more of them. And what is it that they're really interested in? They're not interested in the same things that some of the ones who have been in ISA have really, been doing for many years.
Well, I understand you went through that before, but I don't have a clear picture in my mind of what role the section, any section, plays in this, in the organization as it's apparently envisioned now, the way you're talking about it. I just don't get it. And if one purpose of the section is to provide the local members a way to get a PDH somewhat, that's one thing. If it's provides sources of people, of technology experts to sit on these committees, standards committees, that's something else. But I don't see any communication of that. I don't know how serious they are about that. Are they really serious about the sections? And as you know, when we were trying to figure out where we were going about a year or so ago, more than a year ago, we pounded on the leadership at District 7, and they just ignored us. We said we were going out of business, and it's almost as if they said, okay, adios, have a good day.
Yeah.
That's being addressed now. And I will tell you that the District 7, the leadership meeting that's going to be going on in Galveston, I think in April, this is the topic.
What is the topic?
The topic is local sections and how the local sections provide value.
So part of the
That's only part of it. I mean, unless you get some assistance, some direction, some help, recommendations, or whatever, however you want to describe it, from the district and then from the society itself, it just seems that you're going to flounder like we've been doing.
Well, on our particular level, we have improved a lot.
Yeah.
And then one of the reasons is because we went back to what is it that the ISA members within our area and section really want and that we can provide value to. So one of the keys is that we did it during the daytime, which we're doing now. That means that all groups, ages, can come and learn at a time that they find. And that has to do, again, with this Generation Y and Generation Z. Z and Y, they want to be able to, within their scope of where they think an actual work week or work day is. So that's from when they get to work, 8 o'clock to 5 o'clock. That's when they actually look at it. So we're doing it at lunchtime, which is the reason why we have, this is actually the smallest crowd that we've had this year. But those are some of the things that we are looking at and that we have effectively changed to go with what the section members need or want. So how can we actually attract X and Y and Z generation? That's going to be something that Paul Gruen is now the new president, and he is going to be he has already said that he is looking at ways that they can promote ISA more within within those generations.
He's the president of the society.
As of January 1st, yes, he is the president of the society. So this is kind of a 3-year phase in which they're doing this. It started off with Steve Flantz. They effectively changed within the ISA organization at North Carolina, and within the organization itself, not the volunteer side, not the president and the other, board members. So they're changing that side. They're looking at how they can, in which they have effectively stopped bleeding, because it was for several years that they were probably about 5 to 7 years in which they were continuously bleeding. They have stopped that.
Bleeding.
Yes.
Bleeding what?
They went from,
Members?
well, not just bleeding members, but bleeding money. Yeah. So they've gotten it down to where it's, instead of, $500,000 or $1 million a year that they were losing, they've gotten it down to pretty much 100,000. So they're getting it to where it needs to be. Now, how much more can it develop or grow? That's where ISA is looking more to, like, for instance, how people can contribute to the standards. That's another way. So it's not just at section meetings. There's other ways and other things that ISA provides. Now, that was one of the things that was looked at too, is that sometimes ISA can be confusing to people because ISA has divisions, it has sections, it has, standards, it has all kinds of different ways that it gets and accomplishes its various purposes. So within the section, we do have a new district vice president too, and she has been very go-getting and informative.
Artist is actually on the line, and you are unmuted, Artist, too, if you want to say hello real quick.
Hi, guys.
Okay. Hi, Artist.
Can you hear me?
No.
Yes, get the volume turned down. Go ahead.
Okay, got it. Can you guys hear me now? Hello. Okay, hi. Hey, guys. I am getting ready, hopefully the first of next week, to send the registration and agenda out for the leaders meeting in April. The focus of the leaders meeting is how to recruit new members for you and your board for the following year. So we're actually going to have a working session where I'm going to be tasking the leaders in their groups to bring forward how the procedure of how to do it and how to bring new members on the board and how to increase the involvement from their community. We're going to use the same formula that we used in Houston about 3 years ago to increase our board. So we're going to spend the whole leaders meeting on a lot of that topic.
In other words, the leadership of the board, instead of it just, like, for instance, now we have basically just 3 or 4 members, how to increase both the size and the number of people and the population. So, well, the more that you have on the board, the easier it is to develop and to promote ISA sections. If it's all concentrated within just a few individuals, then it's a burden, first of all. Second of all, it's it kind of constricts on the focus and on getting a lot of different perspectives on how to, for instance, use text messages to get to generation Y and Z.
Diversity of the
Correct.
group. Yep.
Also, the people that you recruit.
And then you get more.
Also, the people you recruit may not be board members. They may wind up working on standards or publications at ISA or some other function, but they become an advocate for the section and they bring other members on board. We've seen a secondary and tertiary relationship of someone who joined but may not be active on the board, but brings other members on that contribute to the section. So a lot of what we're going to talk about is how we do that. We're also going to spend some time on sharing how we do the education program that actually brings in funding for the sections. And we're going to talk about the PE program study groups that we do in Houston and how we want to share all our resources on that in order that you can use that as another way to serve the community as well as bring new people on the board. So we're going to spend a lot of time putting tools in your hands to let you guys do what you need to do in order to make your section what you want it to be. That's it.
Well, okay. All right. Well, people are motivated by self-interest. That's a basic principle I think everybody would agree on. They're motivated by self-interest more than they're motivated by some altruistic feeling about the society. So if you want to maintain healthy sections, it seems to me you've got to cater to the self-interest motivation more than the good of the society and the generation of standards and the revisions of standards. So whatever is done it seems to me has to recognize that.
So the first question I would ask your section leaders are, what are your members motivated by? That's one of the answers that's one of the questions I'm gonna be asking them when they come in for the leaders meeting.
Okay. I think we know the answer to that, at least one of them.
Well, no, and the education thing was something that has traditionally been the moneymaker for the section. You know, when the section was doing the shrimp boil and losing money, you know, $400, $600 on a shrimp boil that nobody attends, we would offset that with a day-long seminar that would make the revenue to put us back in black for the year, and we did that over and over. So, yeah, education is definitely that still appears to be the thing that people are looking for is the education piece,
Yes,
and the education
that's to help them do their job better.
And that's catering to the notion of self-interest.
correct.
Yeah.
Yes.
And then this is not just within what we've done in the past, which has been put on by, thank you, Roger, for having some of these individuals like from Monsanto who have done it for us. But this is going to be also working with ISA International. So ISA has their program, and we're going to be working with them on their established, curriculums to have them here at this section level.
And one of the
It seems that there needs to be more coordination than we have now between the interests of members at the local level and the interests of the society in the district. We need to have a more harmonized approach to all of this, and that's been lacking. And I've been around a long time, and I just haven't seen it.
we're getting there, but it's we're taking a lot of steps, baby steps.
So there is a program for it. It has been addressed. It's looked at, and there's been some. And in the past, I have been to some of these fall leaders meeting. The last one was with Mike Williamson. I think it was about 5 years ago, maybe 6 years ago. There was talk back then. From what I came back from this meeting, there's actually an implementation and a start of getting it accomplished. So that's why I was pretty enthused in coming back from this meeting. Of course, it takes active people and members who, like for instance, artists, myself, Dean, Steve Flantz, those who really care and they actually want to implement that is going to make it work. So it's going to be on all different levels.
My
5 minutes left, so it's.
okay. I'm done.
Go ahead, artist.
Go ahead, artist.
One of my big concerns, and I think the gentleman in
Oh, yeah, I
the
was
room
just
who's speaking here, is we are challenged by some of the section's recycling officers. If we don't resolve that problem and bring in new board members and new officers, we will lose those sections. So I'm not so worried about New Orleans, but I would like to increase your board participation and ergo bring fresh blood into the organization. And I'm also concerned about some of these sections and getting them increased on their board so that they can actually have a transition into leaderships. And guys, it's just hard. But the main goal of this meeting is to bring new leaders on. The next meeting after this will be, how do we make leaders out of all of you? And that's the hardest thing to do. So this year, let's try to bring the new leaders in, and then we'll worry about how to make leaders after we get our hands on them. That's it for me.
Yeah, okay, that's valid. And I do want to kind of talk about that as well. That that whole issue of recycling board members, kind of status quo, and doing the things that you do because that's what you've always done, and that's a death spiral, and we witnessed that. The other side is trying to bring in fresh blood, but you try to bring in fresh blood, and you give them a 1-year term, and you say, okay, here's your operating plan, this is go do it. Without a lot of help, those people flounder, and so you kind of have to have both. So you need the veterans, you need the people that are there that understand what needs to be done and how to do things, and you need to have a way to train the young blood that comes in, and give some people some run time as well. To have a term that's just a year is gone before you know it, and exactly, that's a good point. Yeah,
They give them time.
right. Give them time in the saddle to do the work.
Also, I'd like to propose that we have the next leaders meeting in New Orleans in 2019, but you have to guys be willing to host, and I can always talk to you.
We are.
Yeah, we have, as a board, have
Yep.
agreed.
All right.
So
Very
others here, if y'all want to.
Yeah, any particular topics anybody interested in learning about more for next year, and things of the things that Bill had mentioned, standards that are in development, technologies out there, any interests or any topics, let us know. Speak out now, or obviously you can shoot me an email anytime and let me know. If you're a sponsor out there and you want to deliver a topic, let me know. Or if you're interested in being a sponsor, or if you're just interested in sharing knowledge, you don't have to be a sponsor to come up here and present one of these meetings. If you're involved in a standard or involved in some technology and you want to share the wealth, we'd be happy to give you that the podium to do that.
Yeah, so we shared the information about the standards because that's kind of what we're going to develop the presentations for the year around, hopefully, is those who present incorporate some of those standards that ISA has developed and is working on. All right.
Any other comments or questions or suggestions? All right. Well, we'll close this meeting. We're still working on our February meeting, getting that lined up. I do have a speaker for March. Actually, a very interesting. A guy who wrote a book on the first transatlantic steamship. So he's kind of making a Gulf Coast tour, and he's got an engineering presentation that he does on kind of the first hybrid technology, so steam and wind transatlantic ship, and what it took to pull a team together to make that, to build that ship, and then to make its first journey across the Atlantic. The book's called Steam Coffin. So people that all signed up for it said this isn't a steamship, it's a steam coffin. So looks like a very interesting, kind of a little different take on a presentation, but that's set up for March 13th in this facility right now. So we'll start promoting it. If we get a lot of attendees, we may have to move to a different venue, and we may even host a second venue at UNO for some of the students there for that student section. So stay tuned to that, and you just kind of keep watching your emails for the president's message and our messages that come out, and definitely hit up the website. That's where we're putting everything now. Again, I want to thank Wayne for a lot of work that he puts in keeping that website looking good and fresh.
Absolutely.
All right. Thank you.